Well, elections do have consequences. And in Venezuela, the election chief is refuting a report that voter turnout numbers were, quote, manipulated and inflated by at least 1 million votes. That following the controversial election last week of a new legislative assembly that aims to rewrite the nation's constitution. Venezuela's top election official dismissed the claim, which was made by a British technology firm that developed the election software used in the weekend vote. The opposition contends the vote was rigged to pack the assembly with supporters of President Nicolas Maduro. The U.S. imposed sanctions this week against Maduro for what it calls the illegitimate election of that constitutional assembly. Election-related violence over the weekend has killed at least 10 people, bringing the number of deaths after 4 months of anti-government protests to more than 120 people. And here to discuss the consequences and the aftermath of the Venezuela election, I'm joined from our UN studio in New York by VOA Spanish service broadcaster Celia Mendoza, and also on Skype from the Venezuelan capital, Caracas, by our man at the scene, VOA reporter Alvaro Algarra. I thank you both for joining us once again. I'm so glad you got your connection back, Alvaro. Let me start with you. So we're told 545 delegates of the new assembly will be officially seated on Friday as we go to air. Is the opposition going to allow that to happen, Alvaro?
Good morning, Mil, and to you and to all the audience of Voice of America. Actually, the opposition it's not going to let do this. They said this is a fraud. This is the big fraud, the most powerful fraud in the history of the democracy. Where I am right now, it's the Plaza Altamira. It's going to be full of people any minute to protest against this fraud, which is going to be ready in any minute by the government. That's illegal. The people doesn't want that assembly. After today, they're going to have the superpowers to do whatever they want to do. The crisis continue, Emil. The people continue die in the whole country because of the situation. The inflation of the day today, it's more than any time in the history of Venezuela. The days that will come are going to be very difficult to everybody.
So, Alvaro, you're anticipating, I guess, a larger security presence there at the Plaza Altamira, correct?
Yes, sir. Where I am right now, last week, we were here and 8 members of the guard forces were exploded. They were injured by the protest, and many people were kept by the
right
forces.
And I hope you stay careful. Celia, let me get you in this conversation. You've heard the allegations of voting irregularities and inflated counts. Can we believe those allegations? Are they coming from a reliable source?
I believe those will be allegations that are based on the data they received. This is a company that has been installed in Venezuela since 2004. It was created actually by 2 Venezuelans. In the past, they had never made any complaints against the results in the elections. That even when the opposition has put in question, for example, the election of Nicolas Maduro, that information was also monitored by international community. However, in this particular occasion, they have not had access, the international community or any monitors had access to the voting locations. And that's why the company, after reviewing all the information, the data, believed that this election results were manipulated by the government of Venezuela. Now, we have to remember that those results had been only seen by the CNE, which is the Committee of the Elections. And that is also why the international community has a lot of questions about how they were handled.
So there's a lot of questions. You're at the UN right now. We know that the U.S. Has called this election illegitimate. What's the rest of the international community saying? Do they consider these results legitimate?
So far, we don't see any countries beyond Russia, North Korea, Iran considering these results legitimate. We actually saw Argentina, Peru, the United States, the European Union, even the Vatican has sent a message to the government of Maduro asking for this constitutional assembly to not be installed, to wait for the process of review. Remember that the district attorney has asked for an investigation specifically in those accusations of manipulation of votes.
So, Alvaro, President Maduro says about 8 million voters turned out for Sunday's vote. How accurate are those numbers, and what are you hearing from the opposition?
It's impossible, Mil. I went to all the places where the voters were supposed to be, and they weren't. No one went to that elections. A few people. No one wants that to change the constitution, including the people pro-government. This is a fraud in the government. There is a people pro-government that says that this is a fraud. They were in the place the national. It's called the Consejo Nacional Electoral.
Right.
The institution that counts the votes. This is a big fraud, and the international community has to know what is going on in Venezuela because the media here doesn't inform what is going on.
So Celia, let me get back to you. From an international perspective, does it really matter whether there were 8 million votes or 2.5 million? Does it really matter?
It does, especially because what they were trying to ask the government of Maduro is not that to elect a constitutional assembly. They were asking the government of Maduro to ask the people if they actually wanted the constitution to be changed. That is a decision that he made as an executive power. And for the international community, what it does is sends Venezuela in a very dangerous path, a path that could end up in a dictatorship. And that is something that no one in the region wants and no one in the world wants to see in a country like Venezuela. That is so key for the United States, for the rest of the region, and economic power, and in a country that has fell down into a deep crisis economically, socially, in terms of medicine. And that the humanitarian part is what really concerns to the rest of the world.
Okay, and Alvaro, we're running short on time, but what do you think is at stake for the country of Venezuela once these results become official and this legislative body is actually instituted there as by law? What's at stake?
Mil, the situation is so difficult. The opposition it's not going to accept. They're gonna keep fighting for their rights. They don't going to accept this constitution. I believe this is gonna be worst in the next future, okay? That anything could happen here.
Right, and already
including a civil war. I hope not, but
let's hope it doesn't go there, Alvaro. And Celia, thank you so much for your coverage. Gracias to both of you. Please stay safe. We are anticipating a lot more reports coming from you this weekend, today and this weekend. So we're going to take a short break right now. But when we come back, it is out with the old and in with the new as the White House brings in a new gatekeeper to restore order after a chaotic couple of weeks at 1600 Pennsylvania. This is The Correspondents on Voice of America.